I'm Kelley. I'm 44 years old. I wanted to tell my story because I'm hoping that other women can learn from some of the major mistakes I made when I first got a lap band a little over 6 years ago. I weighed 260 pounds, had the typical dieting story, had been on every single diet, first started Weight Watchers when I was 8 years old, and went up and down my whole life. And finally decided that the definition of insanity was to continue doing the same thing and expecting different results. And when I was looking at the people who successfully kept their weight off, everything I had looked up on the internet was about 2%. So I figured I wasn't lucky enough to be in that 2%, so I went out and I got a lap band. And lap band was really the solution for me because gastric bypass, the other surgery out there, was way too drastic. So I went out and got the lap band, researched, wasn't able to get it paid by insurance. So I researched doctors. There happened to be a doctor in Tijuana who had done over 3,000 surgeries at the time that was actually one of the top. And went online and also researched a lot of feedback that people were saying about him, and it was all good. So I went, oh my gosh, I said 6 years ago. I think it's really more like 5 years ago, and had the lap band put in. Lost about 100 pounds, but unfortunately in that process, it was very difficult. I think initially when I had the first fill put in my band, I think I maybe was overfilled a little bit. The doctor, who was actually down in Tijuana, you had to travel to, so if you're having problems, you literally had to get in the car and go drive there. So in hindsight, I actually probably put off going and seeing him when I was having problems, but I was a little overfilled that first time. So what resulted in the next couple years was a lot of problems with PVing, which is throwing up. And there were days literally where I was throwing up 4 and 5 times a day. I couldn't keep anything down. What I should have done in hindsight is got in the car or got on a plane and flew back to the doctor. But because of the distance and not really being sure if this was right, and the other thing is when you start to throw up a lot like that, there starts to be a psychological thing that comes into play where you're thinking, if I'm throwing up a lot, I must be losing a lot of weight fast. In hindsight, that's really not true. Your body goes into a survival mode and that doesn't happen. So about 3 years into it, I'd lost my weight, but I was throwing up so much, I was having tremendous complications whereby I was having a lot of reflux coming up. I was taking Rolaids everywhere. I knew I was in trouble because I had Rolaids by my bed, Rolaids in my purse, Rolaids next to my desk. I would be in a business luncheon, I'd have to get up and literally run into the bathroom. And it got to where I really got to the point where I couldn't make up any more excuses as to why I was getting up and running out and having to throw up. It got so bad at night, I would even have where, it's going to sound disgusting, but where I started to have backup. And literally fluid would start to back up and I almost would choke and have to run to the bathroom at night. So what had happened was my esophagus, over PVing and throwing up all that time, got extremely irritated. I went back to him a couple times throughout that 3 years, but I ended up having to have the band removed. They removed it. I had it out for about a year, and the weight started to creep up. Once again, I went back to the old tactics, trying Weight Watchers, but by that time, I was exercising very regularly. In July of this year, I went back and I got a second band put in by the same doctor. It was probably one of the most scariest things I'd ever done, to go back and do this one more time. But it took a lot of reflection. I did a lot more research. I also had many more meetings with the doctor that I have in Tijuana, asking him, what did I do wrong? What can I do differently? So I literally was the poster child for what not to do. And I've had the band, I went back and had the band put back in by the same doctor in July. I've lost about 20 pounds, and it has been a completely different experience.